chance, I can someday figure out how to post the recordings online so you could see those as well. So I hope you're all having a good mental health awareness month. I'd like to welcome you all to the May session of the Erie County Workforce Collaborative Training Series. The Erie County Department of Mental Health is delighted to be able to offer these trainings to the dedicated providers in our community. These trainings are being offered to support workforce retention and provide an opportunity for individuals from our provider community to share their expertise. Today we have Dr. Kirsten Vincent, CEO of Recovery Options Made Easy, who will be presenting part 2 of Understanding Vicarious Trauma, The Road to Resilience. I'm pleased to announce that the topic for June will be suicide prevention, and the title is Lethal Means Reduction, the How of Suicide Prevention That Makes a Difference. Celia Spacone, the coordinator of the Erie County Suicide Prevention Coalition, and Katie Couric, the suicide prevention coordinator from the VA, will be our presenters. That's scheduled for June 22nd. You can go to the Erie County Department of Mental Health website to register. I'll also be posting it later in the chat, the link. In July, the topic will be co-occurring disorders, signs, symptoms, and treatments, and more information will be coming on that. So information will be coming on these by email, and you can also find links to register for upcoming events on the Erie County Department of Mental Health web pages, along with the previous presentations that we've had through this year. All trainings will be the 4th Tuesday of the month from 12 to 1. This is truly a community collaborative, and we're looking for volunteers to fill out the calendar for the year to share expertise with our community of providers. If you are interested in doing a 1-hour presentation, please contact me. Also, if you have an interest in any particular topic that you'd like to see covered, let me know that too, and we'll try to find a presenter. My email address is amy.rockwood@erie.gov. This training will be recorded. If you're not okay with this being reported, you can disconnect now. Everyone is muted, at least I hope they are. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Kathleen Larson from the Department of Mental Health will be monitoring the chat for us during the session. Thank you, Kathleen. At the end of the session, we will be asking you to complete a very brief evaluation. We hope you'll take a moment to fill that out so we can continue to improve and make this a meaningful and valuable use of your time. Thank you for joining us today, and I'd like to now introduce Dr. Kirsten Vincent, who will be sharing her expertise about vicarious trauma and resilience. Thank you so much, Kirsten, and it's all yours.
Thanks, Amy, and thanks, Kathleen, for monitoring the chat. I really appreciate it. I know that we're going to pull the PowerPoint up. I'm going to give Amy a moment to pull the PowerPoint up.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to start with, this is part 2 of this topic. We left off talking about vicarious trauma in different signs and symptoms, and things that we would want to think about if we find ourselves struggling. So Amy, we can go to the next slide. So Amy, you have to go down to part 2.
Oh my goodness, I thought I had it all set up. All right.
So you can go to the next slide. There we go. So if anybody has any questions about part 1 or anything they thought of afterwards, feel free to throw them in the chat and we will address them as we go through. I am going to try and leave a few extra minutes towards the end to answer any questions regarding part 1 or part 2 that you may have. All right, next slide, please. So we ended last week just shy of really talking about burnout. And there is a difference between vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, and burnout. When we're talking about burnout, we are talking about just we've lost that desire to go to work or to engage in other activities. we may feel more tired. We may, in our field, we're very passionate about our work. As I've said before, I love what I do, but we don't do it to become rich. We do it because it's what we believe in. If you stop believing in that, or you stop believing in the work that you're doing or your specific job, that can also be a sign of burnout. And developing a very negative or cynical attitude, not that we don't all have days. Everybody has one of those days. Yesterday, I had one of those days. But if that day lasts a week, lasts a month, then there's something else going on. There could be struggles at work with your work environment. It could be struggles with your clients or your participants. And some of that's caused by maybe having developed some boundary issues. On the non-work related side, it could be developing financial issues. I know that COVID in the last year and a half has been really tough on everybody. So there's a lot of people that are struggling with financial issues. Other chronic personal struggles. So those are all things that can happen that can help a burnout develop or add to it. So I may be burning out a little bit at work because I have some work frustrations, but then you tack on a couple of outside work frustrations, and that can really increase that burnout. Right, next slide, please. And just a few more signs and symptoms. I'm not going to read all of them. These slides are going to be posted, so you'll be able to go back and reference them anytime. But feeling frustration or anger about a participant's choices. I see this a lot especially in peer work. When we're working with our participants, we want to provide as many choices as possible. But we're all human beings. We all have our personal way of doing things, our own personal biases. So a lot of times, you might be sitting with a participant and you've laid out choice A, B, C, D, and E, and you present them to your participant. And in your mind, you're saying it's B because I've been there, and B is the right answer. I know it's the right answer. And they pick E. And you go, can't believe they picked that one. But now you're the cheerleader for that one because that's what they wanted. Doesn't always work out, so we go back to the drawing board, and you're still thinking it's B. Why aren't you picking B? And if you're feeling anger or frustration in that moment, then you really need to take a look at what's going on, because again, people are going to make choices. They're going to make choices that are right for them. And if we can't see that, and if we're getting really angry because people aren't doing what we want to do, that's a really strong sign that you're headed towards a burnout. Thinking about your participants outside of work more than you want to. Are thoughts just constantly there? Are you spending a lot of your waking time thinking about, they should have done this. I should have said this. Oh my gosh, I could have presented this so much better. And now I'm worried. When your work life is invading your personal life to that level, that is definitely a sign that you really need to take a look at what's going on. If you're feeling anxious about working with a participant, now somebody's going to yell at me for saying this, but we all know it's true. You look at who you're meeting with that day, and every so often there's a name that will come up, and you're like, oh, not today, please. But we still, we do our work. If that feeling of anxiousness or dread gets to be debilitating, where you're canceling, you're rescheduling, you're finding excuses not to meet with someone, then you really have to, again, take a look at why. That is a strong sign that you are headed towards a burnout. Again, just feeling angry at your participants with their choices, those are all concerning. Feeling that you've lost your abilities to work with someone because of your inabilities. So not that you're angry or frustrated with them, but that suddenly you think you've lost your skills. You really can't think of anything to work with that person on. You're feeling that, you know, they're making the choices they're making you angry, but that's because you're not presenting things right. Important to remember, we are not responsible for the actions or choices of others, as long as we've been, you know, honest and open and, you know, are presenting information to them. They're just not always going to make the choices that we want to. But again, when it becomes that debilitating for your thought process, then that's a sign that you might be headed towards burnout. Taking on too much responsibility, having trouble leaving work at the end of the day, stepping in to control others, maybe being a bit of a micromanager. Those are all things to really take a look at. And I know several people on this call right now who are probably laughing that I'm the one saying that, because I work late. It's hard to get me out of the office. I'm not a micromanager, but I do tend to take on a lot because I want to. So you have to take a look at why are you doing what you're doing. If you're having control issues because you've lost faith in those around you, that things are not going to get right if you're not the one doing them, that's something that you really want to take a closer look at. If you're taking on a lot because you just feel that you're at a point in your life where you can or you'd like to, then that's okay. But it's just something you want to keep an eye on. Why are you doing it and how much is it controlling your life? Okay, next slide, please. And again, this is not an all-encompassing list, but these are just things that I've encountered or that other people have told me that they are encountering. You know, we talked about dread or anxiety if you're going to see a client or a participant. Having any sort of physical pain that, you know, results because you know that you're about to see that person. You're suddenly getting a headache before you have to see someone. You have a horrible stomach ache right before you have to see someone. If the physical symptoms are coming about because you know you're seeing a person, then you are definitely headed towards burnout or you're already there. If you're having other physical reactions to what you're hearing from your participant, for example, your heart races, you have challenges breathing, you're feeling nauseous, you're feeling frozen, that would be when you're with someone and you're having a physical reaction to the conversation that you're having with your participant or your client. You know, wanting to cry or being very emotional after you've met with your participants. And a lot of times this is more of an end of the day type struggle. You know, I've met with a whole bunch of people today. I'm feeling overwhelmed because now I can't leave work because I'm too stuck on thinking about everything that I've heard today. You know, which leads to you feeling helpless about the work that you're doing because they're not making the choices I would make. I can't help them work past something. You know, when you're feeling helpless, you've devalued your skills, you're having these emotional reactions, you are already there. You are at burnout, all right? Next slide, please. So when we're feeling this way, that's when we have to start looking at, do we need help? And asking for help is not easy. Whether it's you're asking a colleague to support you, whether you talk to your supervisor, whether you're talking to friends, whether you're talking to family members, it's not easy to ask for help, especially with this, with the field that we're in. And for a couple of reasons. I know personally there are people in my family who don't believe in counseling, who don't believe in mental health issues. So if I'm having a frustrating time and if I were to reach out to some of those people, their reaction would generally be, well, but you chose to do that job, so figure it out. Which isn't true. A lot, you know, we have the best of intentions going into our field. but there are times when we do need extra support. And if you have a feeling that you don't know who to turn to, or is somebody going to ridicule you, if it's someone that you want to confide in or that you want to talk to, and you're just not sure how they're going to react, you want to take that chance. Really, you need to know enough about yourself and have self-awareness to know that you need the help, and then you have to be brave enough to ask for the help. Maybe you're utilizing EAP services through your job. Maybe, like I said, you're talking to a colleague, a coworker. You know, we are very connected in our fields, in the behavioral health field. So maybe it's calling a colleague from a different agency to see if there's someone there that you could work with. But we have to be a little daring, and we have to be willing to put ourselves out there. And that's scary. It's really scary. And that's okay. Next slide, please. There we go. So just as a slight, moment of laughter, because this is a sensitive topic. I love this cartoon. So according to the latest research, the average human body is 20% water and 80% stress. Yes, every single day. Next slide, please. And this one may or may not be me a little bit. I'm always learning how to relax, doctor, but I want to relax better and faster, and I want to be on the cutting edge of relaxation. That's a little bit me, so I can identify with this. It's important for us to really, as we get into the self-care part of this conversation, it's really important to know what it is that we need to do to relax. And that is not always easy. It can take a long time to really find what works for us. And we are constantly changing and evolving. So what may have helped me relax when I was in my 20s is not going to be the same now that I'm in my 50s. Oh, that sounds horrible. I'm in my 50s, guys. That's so weird. Next slide, please. So what is good self-care? It's not just the things that we do that help us relax, but it's also how we handle our jobs. You need to set good boundaries at work, whether it's boundaries with the people that you work with, your participants, your clients, but also your coworkers, people from other agencies that you know. You need to have good boundaries. Those are going to be different from person to person, but you need to have a really good level of self-awareness to know how to set the boundaries that you need to keep yourself healthy. You want to really embrace everything about yourself, the strengths, the things that we were wanting to work on, our vulnerabilities, and we really need to be as completely self-aware as possible. I have some things that I consider to be very good strengths that other people would consider a vulnerability, because if you take something strength-wise, again, we'll go back to my work home life balance, that I consider a strength, other people would tell me that wouldn't work for them, and that's okay. But you have to know yourself honestly well enough to be able to set goals and boundaries. Exercise and play regularly. That means a lot of different things to people, but finding things that you really like to do. Taking my dogs for a walk is one of them. Exercise can mean exercising your brain. Maybe you like to do crossword puzzles or word searches. Just something that's not work related that gets you up and excited to do it. Again, know what relaxes you, and make a checklist of small projects that you can definitely complete. We like to finish things. It is human nature. We like to create goals. We like to meet the goals, and then we would like to move on to the next goal. The problem is oftentimes we think about something and the goal is what I would call like a top of the mountain goal. And I forget that there's going to be a whole bunch of steps to get to that top of the mountain goal. And if I take on a project with that mentality, I'm not going to complete it in the way that I want it completed. I'm either going to rush or I'm going to have so many starts and stops because I can't start at the bottom of the mountain and take one step to get to the top. But if we break things down into smaller steps and make a checklist for each of those smaller projects, we're accomplishing things. We're checking them off that list. And it really does help you to continue to move forward. And that can be for work projects, that can be for projects around your house, that can be projects just for your own self-awareness. And again, reach out to people if you are really struggling and you just want to talk to someone. All right, next slide, please. So basically, when we talk about self-care, we're really wanting to create an action plan for ourselves. Something that a lot of us do with our participants or our clients. You know, what is it that we can do to, one, look at the symptoms of vicarious trauma or burnout or compassion fatigue? How can we set a goal and objective for, I'm feeling this way because of work. Okay, what do I do in response to that? How do I let that, how do I stop myself from letting that go to the next level? So creating an action plan that is reflective of you and what you need is really important. And the other reason I say that is the absolute worst time to make an action plan or to try and figure out how I would help myself if I'm headed towards a pre-crisis or crisis mode is to do it when I'm in a pre-crisis or crisis mode. You actually need to be in a good place to look at things objectively. If I try to create an action plan while I'm in a crisis state, it's not going to be effective. I'm coming at it with the wrong thought process at that point. So if you're in a good place right now, start working on that. What is it that you need to do? You need to escape, and escape doesn't mean you gotta run away. Escape means maybe you go out for a cup of coffee. Maybe you go to the library or Barnes and Noble and sit there and drink the coffee while you're in Barnes and Noble. I'm a big proponent of that one. You need to rest. What is it that you find relaxing? And again, different from person to person. And then how do you play? Is it creativity? Is it you like to make things? My grandmother used to make stained glass windows. That was her hobby. And she absolutely loved it. And it really, was something that she did to maintain her self-care and wellness. But what's really important to remember is self-care needs to be our priority. It is a necessity. It's not just something that we every so often should pull out and say, you know what, I should just do a self-care day. We should be doing things every day, especially in the field that we're in. It's not a luxury. It really does need to happen. And that, again, requires sitting down and making some plans, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later on. Next slide, please. So to create a self-care plan, to know what it is we need to, really be aware of a few things. Self-awareness is key. We are the experts on ourselves. Nobody else is. Other people can help us. Other people can give us suggestions. Other people can give us support. But when it comes down to making a self-care plan, we need to have that self-awareness. What are our needs? What are our limits? What is it that really is it that we want to do? We want to make sure that we're keeping our mind and body in the same place, that we're not creating stressful situations for ourselves, but that we are creating things that are positively challenging. Maybe I walk a block with the dogs every day. I'm going to start, increasing that because I enjoy it. It doesn't have to be big things. You want to find balance, both professional and personal. And again, anybody who's out there that knows me, don't laugh at me about that one. But you want to make sure you're taking a break for lunch, that you're drinking lots of water throughout the day, that when you go home at night, put the work away. You want to spend time with your family, with your friends. I would say that because of COVID, for the last year and a half, what I've heard from a lot of people is we're working from home. How do you shut that off? How do you create a separate work-life balance when I'm sitting at my dining room table as my workspace, and then I'm going right into, family mode? I hadn't really thought about it, but I was definitely not aware of how much I needed my drive to and from work every day. Even if I'm working in an office that's closer to home, that time was just kind of my time to either prepare to go into the office or to process everything that happened at work at the end of the day. So what I started doing, and I advised other people to do, is what is your commute time? Is it 10 minutes? Is it half an hour? Put on your headphones, listen to, if it's the news that you listen to in the car, if it's music that you listen to in the car, if it's a book that you listen to in the car, whatever that may be. Put on your headphones, find a chair, and listen for that amount of time. And let that be your I'm heading to work mode. Do the same thing at the end of the day when you want your work day to officially end and you want your home life to begin again. Put the headphones back on and do that same thing. Process your day, and then move into I'm now in my home life. This is not the most feasible suggestion, but I did advise a few of my staff who were, they have their laptop again on the dining room table, but then the kids come home and, dinner, and there are my dogs right on cue. That you would get a tote and pack up everything that you had out for work and go ahead and put it away so you're not looking at it all night long. So my dogs think that there is a delivery man outside and they really want whatever package that is that he's bringing. Sorry. So if you can, pack up your work life so that it's not sitting there and staring at you all evening. Something else you can do that's pretty easy. You want to make sure that you are staying connected to people. I always say, try and have at least a 10-minute conversation a day with someone. It doesn't have to be about anything serious, but just to stay connected and give them your full attention. Don't sit on your phone and text or read your emails, but just something that is a strong human connection. And it can be via Zoom. It can be a phone call. It can be even be a texting conversation, but just something that keeps you connected to people. All right, next slide, please. So again, not an all-encompassing list, but some things that you can take a look at. I think I mentioned it before, I'm an avid reader. So I make time every day to read something that has absolutely nothing to do with my research or my work, something that's just something I want to read. I love gardening. I love, spending time with my dogs, except when they're barking when I'm trying to present something. I love to journal. I journal every day. So you don't have to do everything on the list. Nobody would have time to do everything on the list. There's probably things that are not on this list, but that you do. But, again, lots of things can be considered self-care that we wouldn't normally think of. Right. And if you guys have any other ideas that you want to give to everybody else in the group, again, throw those in the chat. I love hearing new ideas or things that people have thought of that I had never thought of. So please share those with us. And, ultimately you want to seek out experiences that instill hope and comfort. If I'm going to get really nervous or uptight about going to do something, well, then that is no longer in self-care because I'm stressed about going and doing it. Next slide, please. Right. So I do encourage you to talk with your coworkers about self-care strategies that have worked for them and then you can share ones that have worked for you. You know, that connectivity with the people that we are around is really important. But we're learners at heart. We want to learn new things. We want to try new things, and those experiences that we share with each other are really valuable to maintaining our self-care. You know, and I talked a minute ago about the car ride to work and from work. The other thing I realized once COVID kind of shut everything down is I would spend a decent amount of time in my car every day driving to meetings. And it may have been a few minutes, it may have been, 20 minutes, may have been an hour. But even that time between those meetings is really important. And I found myself in a really bad habit over the last year and a half of allowing Zoom meetings to be scheduled back to back to back to back to back from the beginning of my day to the end of my day. Like, to the point where I didn't even have time to go up and get another cup of coffee because they were starting and ending and starting and ending. So I would caution people who are going to continue to work from home, even if it's a hybrid model, to be aware that we shouldn't really do that to ourselves. We need those little breaks in the day. You need to take the meeting that just ended and you need to put that in perspective. And if you are taking notes, finish writing your notes, then take a minute or two to breathe before you go into the next appointment. I found last spring, early summer, that I was doing appointments and meetings so close together that at the end of the day, I would go look at my notes and I'd be like, okay, I know I promised to do something in that meeting. I did not write it down because I just assumed that I would remember it all at the end of the day. And although I can't see all of you, I'm sure there are a few of you nodding, yeah, we did that too. It's just important to make sure that we're giving ourselves time, even a minute or two. And when I have on here, develop containment strategies, I don't mean in an unhealthy way compartmentalize, but I mean, don't let one thing run right into the other, because then you're not going to be effective with anything that you're doing. You need to make that hard stop with this, finish out what was going on with it so that you can move on to the next thing. And this is prioritize our well-being over your participants. And I realize that sounds really harsh, but we're going to get to a slide in a minute where that will make more sense. So I'm not saying ignore your participants or your clients. I'm just saying you cannot support someone if you're not supporting yourself, is really what it comes down to. Next slide, please. So I put this in there just as a reference point to you. We talk about different things as it relates to self-care often, but we don't really put it into thoughts that relate to our daily life. It's not just one thing. Everything that we do can really be affected if we're not taking care of ourselves. We may not be connecting with people that we care about very often if we're in a burnout or a vicarious trauma state. It can impact our cognitive abilities, harder to remember, not really able to carry thoughts through, losing track of your thoughts. Of course, that also happens because I just turned 50, so now I got to figure out which is age and which is overwork. But it really can have a very strong impact on every portion of our life, everything we do. And again, not just at work, but with our personal lives. Next slide, please. Right. So what do we want to talk about when we want to talk about self-care? We want to remind ourselves why we do the work that we do and how we measure success in work. So I think I said this last time, I interview a lot of people. And one of the things that always comes out in an interview, because I ask the question, why do you want to do this work? Why do you want to work in this field? I want to help people. That would be the answer I get probably 99% of the time. I think that we all want to help people. But if you don't have something else to connect your work to in terms of what you're passionate about or why you want to help people, it's a lot easier to fall into a burnout category. That's why goals and really understanding what it is we want to do, or admitting that, yes, I want to be in health and human services field, but I didn't know that, I thought I wanted to be a counselor, but I don't want to be a counselor, but I'd rather work in research. It's hard for people to say, this is what I planned on doing. And until I got kind of in the nitty gritty of it, it's what I thought I wanted to do. But now I'm not so sure. So finding where your passion is, finding what it is that you actually like to do is really important, because then you're going to enjoy your job. You're going to want to get up and go to work. If you don't, really find out that passion, it's going to be a lot harder to not let work become a negative. And you need to then figure out, how do you measure success in your work? Now, I am a little bit of a data nerd, a little bit, or a lot, depends on who you talk to. But that doesn't mean I necessarily know how to measure success in my work. And I'm not saying I want everybody to go write down, if 80% of this happens, then I'm doing great. It really should be more of a feeling. Are you feeling that you've been able to support your participants? Are you feeling that your research is going well and this is the next step we want to take? How do you personally measure that? And there is no magic formula other than you feel good and you feel positive about your work and you feel positive about where you're headed to. And then, what can you control in your work? We can't control every aspect of our work life. We can't control every aspect of our personal life. But knowing what we can control and what we can't really is important when you want to talk about self-care. Because if I'm stressing over a whole bunch of things that I have no control over, I'm never going to meet that mark that I've set for myself in terms of success. So what can you control? What can't you control? What can you contribute to, even though you may not be controlling it, and set realistic goals. And then, what are the costs and rewards of the work that we do, and how are you personally changing? I said it a little while ago that I'm not the same person now that I was in my 20s. And self-awareness is understanding that that evolution is natural and that I'm going to be changing all through life. If I make it to 70, I'm not going to be the same person I was at 50. At 50, I'm not the same person that I was at 40. But if I don't embrace those changes, and if I don't find the positive in them, that's actually going to hold me back from being successful with my self-care. All right, next slide, please. So I said a few minutes ago that I have to prioritize some of the things going on with me over my participants. And I mean that in the most positive way possible. And I found this saying. I also happen to be a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan. And I thought, you know what, this is really true. When I'm not taking care of myself, I can't take care of you too. So if when he says this, I used to say, if you will take care of me, I will take care of you. That would definitely have been me in my 20s. But now, at this point in my life, I will take care of me for you if you will take care of you for me. If we all, really work on our self-awareness, if we all work on keeping ourselves healthy, then we can be much more productive as a team. Whether it's a team at work, whether it's a team in a committee that we're on, most importantly, if it's our family and our personal life, we have to be able to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of each other. It should be a very symbiotic relationship. Next slide, please. So I know this is going to seem a little silly, but you need to find your chair. Somebody said this to me years ago. In this work that we do, in the fields that we're in, we're going to see things, we're going to hear things, and there are days that it's much more difficult to go home and not think about it than others. But what you need to do is you need to find your chair. Now, the person that told me this will go home every night, sit in front of the fireplace, and drink a whiskey on the rocks. That's fine, because otherwise he didn't drink, and that was his way of relaxing. So I encourage everybody to find your chair. And Amy, if you start hitting the arrows, other images are going to pop up. So your chair may be coming home and spending time with your pets, going for a walk, playing with those cute little faces. Come on, how could you not want to? And maybe spending time with your partner and, having just that one-on-one time with that person that you love. It may be planning, it may be journaling, it may be reading, it may be just sitting down and doing something for ourselves. Can't remember the next one. Oh, okay. I know that coming home and watching TV may not seem like the healthiest of choices. I, however, have known a lot of people who work, just like we do, very stressful jobs, that go and they have this strange love for reality TV, or their guilty pleasure TV shows. We all have one. And that is relaxing. I think, like when people say they're going to binge watch something on Netflix or Hulu, I think that it's just not a bad thing. You can get lost in that for a few moments, and sometimes what we're watching is really absurd, and it will make us laugh, and that can be really helpful as well. There's 2 more images, I think. I may have a small minor coffee addiction, because I think I've brought it up like 5 or 6 times now. But I think it's just sharing that time with someone, whether it's a friend, your partner, your kiddos, just sitting down and having, again, those connected conversations that we all really need. And then family. When my kids were younger, it would have been, leaving work and then running to like all the different sports and activities that they did. But it was those times when we were traveling, to activities where we could talk. Those are priceless moments. Enjoy them. Now that my kids are older, it's talking and texting daily. So it's a different kind of interaction, but we make sure that we have that interaction. So like I said, you want to find your chair.
Another idea that Amy typed in was that comedy can be very healing.
Yes. And hey, you guys should all drive down to Jamestown. We can go to the Comedy Center anytime. Laughter is the best medicine. It really can be. It lets us release those emotions. It gives us something to connect, to whoever we're with, if we're watching a comedy show or, watching TV. I would have told you this in my 20s. I don't know that I would do it now. I used to like to find really sad shows that would make me cry, because I just needed to release that energy. Crying can be very cathartic, but depending on my mood, it would have been difficult for me to do on my own. But certain TV shows or movies would certainly help that. Until I got pregnant, and then I cried at like everything on TV all the time, but that was really it. But knowing ourselves to know what it is that we need is the challenge. And then I don't remember if I talked about this in part 1, but creating rituals for yourself that help keep you balanced and on track. So I have an evening ritual that involves herbal tea and quiet music and journaling, and then reading. And it's not a lot. It's not like I do this for hours on end. I may only write a few sentences in my journal. I may only read a chapter in a book, but something that just allows me to kind of take my day and take it out of my brain and put it off to the side, and I can pick it up there the next day if I need to. but that allows me to relax. Making sure that my briefcase is packed and ready to go in the morning, and that I picked out my clothes, because 4:30 in the morning is not the best time to try and color coordinate an outfit, but the night before is much better. And if I can go to bed and know all of those things are set, and I've done the ritual with the reading and the journaling, and I've laid out the clothes and the bag is packed, I can go to sleep knowing that my morning is going to be a little less chaotic. If I wake up in the morning and things like that are not done, I'm already stressing and I haven't even left the house yet. And that does not set me up to have a productive or healthy day. So find what it is that you need. I have a friend who gets up every morning and she has to make her bed. I don't know why. This is her thing. She has to make it, because if she comes home and the bed's not made, she says it really stresses her out. I have another friend whose morning ritual is get up, make a cup of coffee. She reads her Bible. That centers her for the day. That works for her. That's fantastic. Whatever it may be, but again, having that morning ritual and that afternoon, evening ritual really can help us. And I think that is the last slide before the question slide. Also important to remember, you don't have to be perfect. Nobody's asking you to be perfect. We want to be good at what we do. We want to support others. We want to support our work. We want to support our colleagues. But no one is perfect, and sometimes you got to cut yourself some slack. You can't do everything, but we need to prioritize what has to be done. And sometimes the day is going to end and not everything on our to-do list is done. And that's okay. We get the time-sensitive stuff done because that's part of our responsibility. But the stuff lower on the list, that can be moved to tomorrow's to-do list. So does anybody have any questions? Like I said, I plan on leaving us about 10 minutes for questions and comments or rude remarks. I know Mark, if he's listening, is laughing at that one because he says it all the time. I totally stole that from him. So I didn't see, Kathleen, was there anything in the chat?
I don't see any questions yet, but we'll give people a minute to maybe type some in.
I don't know if apparently that cookie wore off after a moment because they started barking again. I don't know if everybody on the call uses RAP plans, which are wellness recovery action plans, and then the crisis plans that also go along with it. There's one that's called RAP for Work, which is an excellent resource. I give those to my staff. It really kind of helps you work out an action plan for work to keep our goals straight, our objectives straight, so that we have a much more successful day. And it's always something that's there to refer you to, or that you can refer to.
We do have a question that came in. It's from Anthony, and he said, how do you feel about checking work phones when you leave work?
I would say it depends on your job. I tell my staff that are not exempt that when they leave the office, they should turn their phones off and not touch them again until the next day. My work phone is always on, but that's because I have the whole agency. So if something happens, I need to know right away. So if you're in a position where you're not, in a crisis program, then you don't need to know something that happens at 3 o'clock in the morning, I would say turn it off and don't look at it. The emails can wait. The voicemails can wait. I do have with my staff, because my phone is always on, a code that if they want to talk to me, but they're not sure that it's something that they should call me about, they text me that code. And I know that means that they think that something's going on that they want to talk about, and I will call them. Anything else? Oh, okay, Amy's putting stuff in there for the next session.
No other questions, but Amy has some info in there.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I'm really excited to hear Dr. Spicone. She is awesome, and she and the coalition are doing really great work. So I highly encourage everybody to come back next month and listen to her and Katie.
I did see a comment. Where did it go? Oh, that just went to the from Daryl. What kind of plan was that you mentioned?
Wrap for work. So wellness recovery action plan. They have them for daily life, just for ourselves and our non-work mode. They have one that's called the wrap for work, which is specifically related to your job and handling stress there. And then they also do crisis plans.
And where can you find that?
I'm sorry, Amy, what?
Where would we be able to find that?
So you buy them through the Copeland Center, although I think there's probably versions of it online. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, I can get them a copy.
Okay, thank you. Daryl, hopefully that answered your question.
Commented about starting the day with an accomplishment. There's a link in the Q&A box related to benefits of making your bed, but then starting the day with an accomplishment.
I like that. Like what? I'm trying to think of what I could start my day with as an accomplishment. Maybe it would not be chugging like 3 cups of coffee before I get out the door. Accomplishment. It always figures when I leave time for questions at the end, we don't have any. When I don't plan for it, then all of a sudden there's all these questions and I'm running 10 minutes over. So I hope that everybody enjoyed, part 1 last month, part 2 this month. My contact information is on the title slide. So if anybody has any further questions or would like to discuss any part of the presentation, feel free to email or call me, and I'd be more than happy to talk with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kirsten. That was awesome. And I want to thank everyone for coming today and being part of this. We've really enjoyed doing it, and the development of this and learning the technology. That's been fun for me. And it's very exciting that this time everyone can see everyone's comments. So progress, onward and upward. As I mentioned before, the June session, lethal means reduction, the how of suicide prevention that can make a difference, with Dr. Spicone and Katie Couric. I posted a link to where to register in the chat box. I'll also be sending out emails and posting it on our webpage. I do ask you to complete the evaluation. That will help us going forward. You can also include in there if there's any topics that you're interested in hearing about, or if you yourself would be interested in doing a presentation, or someone who you think would be great for a presentation, you can start to talk them into it, and either you or they can contact me. This is really by us, for us, and it is what we make it. So again, thank you again, Kirsten. Thank you all for being here, and I hope you have an awesome day. Thank you, Kathleen, for monitoring the chat.
No problem.
And have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Kirsten. Great job. You've got some great feedback in here too. Very helpful presentation and a lot of excellence. So great.
Good. As long as people are getting something useful, that's all I care about.
Okay.
Very helpful.
Awesome.
All right. See everyone soon. Hopefully see you in June. Hey, that rhymes.
She's a
comedy.
poet.
We're laughing.
That's beautiful. Okay.
We should start filming comedy sketches of providers throughout the area and then put them on a web page so that people can just laughing with colleagues.
That would be fun. In fact, I know someone who could help us do that.
Oh, Yes, good idea, Amy.
All right, I'm going to shut her down. Have a
Yep.
wonderful day, everyone.
Great.
And see you in June.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.